The United States dollar is going to zero. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you some examples of how the purchasing power of the US dollar is rapidly depleting, which is also exactly why I posted that video just a few weeks ago titled, Saving Money is Stupid. So let's get into it and discuss all the details and what is going on with the almighty greenback. So right now, all of us are very aware of this inflation that we're currently dealing with. Now, historically, inflation usually runs around 2 to 2.5%. However, this very high inflation that we're currently dealing with is just exacerbating the problem, making our dollars and the purchasing power worth even less and less. A perfect example is when you go out to the stores to buy a good or a service, are you buying more, equal to, or less than what you previously were a few years ago? Well, I can almost guarantee you you're probably buying less today than what you were just a couple years ago, and this is a perfect example of depletion of purchasing power of your dollars. So now let's get into it and describe some examples of what's going on right now with the United States dollar and even 2 to 2.5% inflation over long periods of time and how it depletes the purchasing power of our money. Check this out. As of right now, the federal minimum wage is $7.25 in the United States. However, what do you think the federal minimum wage was back in 1956? I'll tell you, it was 75 cents per hour. Could you imagine that? 75 cents per hour in 1956. You're probably thinking, how could anybody live on that little bit of money? Well, check this out. 75 cents per hour as a federal minimum wage in 1956 is the exact same as $7.25 today as the federal minimum wage. So what do you think about that? The same question would be asked now today. Who can live on $7.25 per hour? The answer is virtually nobody. You can't. Unless you're working like 80 hours a week, which it's almost impossible for virtually anybody to do that, you can't really live on that. So the same question that was presented back in 1956 with a minimum federal wage of 75 cents per hour is the exact same question we're dealing with today because it's the exact same thing. So this shows you one example of the purchasing power of the United States dollar depleting over long periods of time because of inflation. Again, 1956, 75 cents is the same as $7.25 today, all because of inflation. So here's what else is interesting about this. So the current federal minimum wage of $7.25 that we have right now was actually put in place back in 2009. So quite a few years ago, and they have not changed it, even though there have been pieces of legislation coming through Congress where they've wanted to raise it up to $10 an hour, $13 an hour, even $15 an hour, but all of these bills continue to fail. However, check this out. Even that this $9.25 per hour federal minimum wage from 2009 has lost 27.4% of its purchasing power just in the last, 13 or so years since this was actually put in place. So just over that period of time, this $7.25 has lost over a quarter of its purchasing power just because of inflation. Do you kind of see the problem here? Yeah, this is a major, major problem and how our money is becoming worthless over time. So it's kind of interesting to watch all this play out, right? Now, again, I want to point this out to you. Because of this rapidly rising inflation right now, we're basically just exacerbating the problem, whereas the purchasing power of our dollars is getting less and less and less. You probably experience this every time that you go out to the store right now. Even when you go out to the gas station, 1 gallon of gas today is significantly more than what it was a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, significantly more. Think of things like a cell phone, maybe a computer, maybe a vehicle, a house, literally anything out there, a box of cereal, a can of soup. Literally, it does not matter what it is. Everything is more expensive today. Is it because there's scarcity among all these products? No, it's because our dollars are are worthless. That's what they are. They're worth less and less and less going forward. And that's what's continuing to jack up the prices on everything, right? So anyway, kind of interesting to watch all this play out. However, check this out. So over 30 years ago, this was also put in place as well. For those workers who receive regular tips like a waiter or waitress, some people like this, the federal minimum wage for these individuals is $2.13. Now you might be wondering, who can live on that? Well, the answer is nobody. Nobody can live on that in the United States. But this is the federal minimum wage for those individuals who receive regular tips, like I just said, service individuals like waiters, waitresses, things like this. But again, this is why we're seeing so many pushes across many different states right now, where we're seeing all these different pieces of legislation coming out, and some of these individual states are raising their own minimum wages, or at least in major cities, to $10, $13, even $15. And I even saw in some locations, they're thinking about raising the minimum wage up to $20 per hour. Now, don't get me wrong. That would be really nice for the people that are earning that money, but remember, what do businesses need to do when they are needed, or when they're forced to pay, say, $15 an hour or $20 per hour? Guess what they do? They just raise their prices. So at the end of the day, it's all kind of a wash because prices just get jacked up. That $6 coffee is now $12 because they need to pay their employees more and more. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't pay people more. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just simply saying large corporations and companies, they need to maintain their margins. So kind of interesting play how all of this stuff continues to play out. But the fact of the matter is, now that the US dollar is no longer hinged on the gold standard, in other words, the dollar is backed up by virtually nothing. It's backed up by a promise. That is it, right? If you've ever looked at the dollar, it has some language on there. Basically, it says it's a promissory note, and it's a debt of the Federal Reserve, right? So basically, it's just a promise. That's all it is. However, prior to 1971, the United States dollar was on something called the gold standard. You could literally walk into a bank and trade a $10 bill for a little bit of gold at that time. So as a result of that, every single dollar was backed up by something. Gold. Right now, it's backed up by nothing. It's backed up by hot air. Well, does hot air ever have any standing in anything? No, it doesn't have anything, right? So we've seen a lot of stuff here over the last couple years where we've seen this talk about possibly going back to the gold standard. There's no way. The United States probably will never go back to the gold standard. Why? There's just no way that it ever would. Why would they? They can pull out their printing press and print up as much money as they possibly want to at any given time. But if we're all backed up by gold, they couldn't do that. They would have to make sure that they have enough gold in the reserves to make sure that they have enough to pay out in the event that somebody came in and wanted to buy all the gold in the reserves. Not going to happen, right? So, however, we have seen this across other countries out there where they've talked about bringing back the gold standard and all kinds of stuff. At the end of the day, yes, it would bring our money back down to parity, as in it would all be backed by something, as in the gold standard. But as of right now, there's just no way. All they want to do is continue to print more money. And what is this going to do as they print more money? It just makes our dollars worth less and less and less and less. Which again, I want to point this out for you. A few weeks ago, I did point out that video, and I made that dedicated video literally titled, "Saving Money is Stupid." The reason for that is, look at these examples that I'm giving you right here in this video. For these reasons, this is exactly why saving money is a terrible idea. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we should all go out and empty out our bank accounts, take all the cash that we have and go blow it on something that we don't need. I'm not saying that at all. I'm simply saying that saving cash over long periods of time is a terrible idea because it is depleting very rapidly right now. Especially with this inflation that we're currently dealing with right now, the purchasing power of our dollars is literally losing value, what seems to be like every single day. So seriously, go out to the store today, buy 5 different items. Keep your receipt, and then in a month, go back and buy those same 5 items. You're probably going to be paying more in a month. If you would have done this a year ago, and then you keep doing this every single month for, say, a year or a year and a half, 2 years' time, you'd probably see that price change every single month on your receipt for the same 5 items, because that's just what's happening right now. So it's too many dollars chasing too few goods and services. That's exactly what inflation is. There's too many dollars. There's way too much dollar supply floating around chasing too few goods and services. Therefore, there's too much demand because there's too many dollars, right? Chasing too few or finite goods and services. Kind of makes sense? And that's what's causing all the inflation. So anyway, when it comes down to it, the US dollar has lost about 99% of its purchasing power since the United States dollar was brought into use, like regular use, right? So as a result of this, just like any currency all around the world, the United States dollar is a currency. Why do we say it's a currency? Because that's exactly what it does. It's a current. It flows around. Just like electricity, just like a current in a river, something like this, it flows. That's what money does. It flows between parties. It flows between me and you, between you and the business, between the business and somebody else, the suppliers. You know what I mean? It's just constantly flowing. It's a current. That's why we call it currency. Well, guess what? Over the history of the world, all currencies around the world, guess what happens to them? They disappear. They're gone. Goodbye. They disappear after some point. So that's why we're hearing all this talk right now out of the Federal Reserve about a CBDC, central bank digital currency, or a Fed coin, which is basically just a digital coin like a Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency, but rather than it being like a deregulated currency, maybe like some kind of cryptos, it would actually be regulated by the federal government, and of course, it'd be distributed by the Federal Reserve. So, as a result of this, yes, it'd be great, but at the end of the day, if they continue to print these new CBDC or Fed coin, just like they print regular paper money, it's going to be the same purpose. It'll have zero value. It'll be worthless over time, just like all of the currencies. So, do you kind of see the problem here? So anyway, I want to point this out to you because it is pretty much inevitable. The United States dollar will be going away at some point. Is it going to happen tomorrow? Probably not. Is it going to happen in a year? Probably not. Is it going to happen in 10 years? It could. It depends. How fast does this inflation continue to rage on? Does this inflation stay elevated for a couple years to go? What goes on here? But we already do know that the Federal Reserve is aggressively looking into and actively looking into creating a Fed coin or CBDC, again, central bank digital currency. So anyway, kind of interesting to watch the whole progression of the US dollar, but just like every currency around the world in the history of the world, the US dollar, the almighty greenback, will be a little bit of a souvenir at some point in the future. Anyway, you got to watch all this stuff closely because at the end of the day, when we all have money, whether it's our income that we're dealing with, whether it's money that we have in savings, investments, anything like this, it's all going to be impacted by virtually the depletion of the purchasing power and pretty much the demise of the US dollar. Anyway, hope this video helps you out and give you a better perspective as to what's going on with the US dollar and why we continue to lose value with the purchasing power. In other words, how much can you buy for $1? Can you buy anything for $1 anymore? Probably not. Not much anyway. If you can anything, it's not going to be much. Certainly not as much as you could buy a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. You can buy certainly significantly less. Anyway, hope this video helps you out. Please make sure to subscribe down below if you haven't done so yet. Share the video with your friends, family, social media, and go back and check out some of the other thousands of videos right here on the channel. Until next time, enjoy your day. Thanks so much for watching this. Have a good one and enjoy your day. I'll catch you again later in the next